We're going to hear from Omar Farah, who's Fahad's attorney at the Center for Constitutional Rights.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think that's a particularly powerful part of the movie, all of it really, because it's so obviously true. You know, all of us who work for and with the men who are at Guantanamo have been hearing some variation of that story since the first time we arrived at the prison. I'm someone who comes from someplace. You know, I didn't miraculously end up at Guantanamo. I come from somewhere. Fahad wrote a piece that sort of accompanies this statement, and one of the first things he says is that I'm someone who loves and who is loved. And I think one of the things we've struggled with at Guantanamo is to figure out a way to express that basic truth to those of you who can't go to Guantanamo. And I think at this late stage, the classification regime, the regime of secrecy around Guantanamo, which persists, even though no one can credibly argue that there's any national security or intelligence secrets that have to be guarded at Guantanamo. But the reason that regime persists is to make it hard, if not impossible, to take that basic story from Guantanamo and deliver it to you. You know, I've been meeting with Fahad since 2008, and pretty early on, it dawned on me that if I could figure out a way to simply get him here in my seat to give the talk that I'm giving, he would be out of Guantanamo in no time. There is a basic humanity that I think is undeniable when you meet men like Fahad and the others that we represent at Guantanamo, that makes what is otherwise, at least on the surface, a very complicated political and legal and legislative landscape seem absolutely simple and plain. And I think that now is really the challenge for Guantanamo work, is to insist when people, the decision makers who have control over Fahad's fate, over Shakar's fate, say that the problem with Guantanamo is that it's complicated and Yemen is unsafe and it implicates important national security considerations that we have to address before we can release the men. And the procedural mechanisms around habeas corpus in U.S. District Court in D.C. are complicated, and we have to weigh what the right standard of evidence is. Whenever that becomes the paradigm that Guantanamo is understood in, I think your eyebrows should raise and recognize that for what it is. It's a way of making something that's utterly simple complicated, so that the decision makers who control Fahad's fate and Shakar's fate can insulate themselves from what I think is deserved, harsh, really withering criticism for allowing what's going on at Guantanamo to persist year after year. All three branches of government have utterly failed, and as much as we focus on the president, because ultimately he does have the authority over Fahad and the other men at Guantanamo, everyone's hands are dirty. The federal courts in this country long ago slammed the door on the cases of Fahad and the others at Guantanamo and made it essentially impossible to win by playing by the rules. They bent the law and common sense and logic, all of it on its ear, to deprive basic meaning of rule of law of any actual consequence at Guantanamo. Congress, for its part, sees I think Guantanamo has the gift that keeps on giving and has used the annual defense appropriation bill as a vehicle, as a mechanism to express outright hostility towards a plan to close Guantanamo. And for sure, the White House has sat on its hands sometimes, other times actually sabotaged its own plans to close Guantanamo in service of more important political interests. And so really what we attempted to do with this film at the Center for Constitutional Rights is really just to punch through that morass and bring you as close as we possibly could to Fahad, and recognizing that Fahad's story is emblematic of everyone that I've met at Guantanamo, and I think Ramsey would second that, and all the people that I know who are doing this work, and confront you all with his basic humanity. And that's why the last line of the film is so powerful to me, and it has always struck me since Fahad said it a couple of years ago. This life will be over in 20 or 30 years, and all of us have to contend with where we want to place ourselves in this struggle. And I think that is so powerful because it's an admonition and a charge all at the same time, right? For those who would rather turn away from what's happening to Fahad, it's a reminder that at some point we all have to reckon with our conscience. We all have to reckon with, however it is we choose to understand our presence here. At some point, we're going to have to answer about how we feel about these things. And for those who are willing to engage with the torment of being in a cell year after year and not knowing when, if ever, you'll be released, it's a charge to say, take these stories, think about them, process what they mean to you, tell them to someone else, and let's make it harder for this to go on. What Fahad says about the film, and has said to me on a number of occasions, is that telling his story and sharing it with other people and being willing to talk about Guantanamo is not just raising awareness, it's raising your voice. That is an act in and of itself. Coming and being willing to talk about Guantanamo at this stage is an act in and of itself, and I think that's very important, and it's why I'm so happy to be here, to be able to talk to you all and to do my part to introduce you to Fahad. I think it's very exciting that there have been such an uptick in transfers and an uptick in the pace of transfers, and I think all of us are hoping that this symbolizes a renewed commitment on the part of the administration to finally make good on this long overdue promise to close Guantanamo. But I do think there's some lessons in that. One is on this issue of whether or not Guantanamo is complicated or actually really simple. Look what the president was able to do in the last 2 months just by bringing the power of his office to bear on this problem. Over 20 men have been released. Nothing really has changed in the legal or the legislative landscape or the political climate. Nothing has really changed in the last 3 months to make this possible. It's just that the president has decided, for whatever his reasons are, to focus on it. I think that at once should make us optimistic about what's possible and also critical that it's 2015 and we're still here. So keep that in mind. And the other thing I would say is, again, as exciting as it is to see some more men get a chance at reclaiming a life of freedom, we should all, I think, police the reflex to turn away from Guantanamo too early. It's something that I feel. I wouldn't fault you for, at long last, wanting to feel as though there's some other injustice that I can spend my time thinking about, but at least Guantanamo has been put to rest. But we are certainly not there yet, and I think there are men who are cleared, and it seems as though the administration is interested in trying to repatriate them or find countries that were willing to resettle them, but there are also men who have been designated for indefinite detention under the laws of war, meaning that the government takes the position that it can hold them potentially for the rest of their lives on the basis of legal authority that allowed the president to invade Afghanistan after 9/11. And I think you should expect that for that category of men and the men who are slated for prosecution in the ad hoc and utterly convoluted military commission system, that there's a long road ahead. And to the extent that the administration sees bringing those men here to the United States and dispersing them in supermax prisons throughout the U.S. as a way to finally close Guantanamo and answer this problem, you should recognize that closing Guantanamo has always meant, in a sincere and honest way, and in a way that's faithful to our best democratic norms, has always meant not closing that particular facility, but dismantling a regime of indefinite detention without charge or trial. And so this is an important moment and it's an exciting moment, but I think we have to steel ourselves for more work. And in that sense, thank you for coming. Thank you for being willing to think about these issues. And I hope that you'll take what you heard today about Shakar and tell just one person about it. Tell them about the Stand with Shakar Omar campaign. Share Andy's stories and his book. Please share our film. It's on YouTube. There's a hashtag Free Fahad. That's not nothing. Over 20,000 people have clicked and watched that video. And I have never been able, I just don't think it would have been possible to conceive of a way to tell Fahad's story to that many people without this. So there's something that you can do, and that's not CCR's work. That's really is individuals like yourself being willing to share the story. So thank you for coming. It's really meaningful, and I look forward to telling Fahad that I saw you all.